Good morning, and welcome to our Alternative Education for Disruptive Youth, AEDY, Compliance Monitoring Training. We welcome those AEDY programs and our sending LEAs who are part of our Year 2 cyclical monitoring process. We look forward as team members to work with you through the process of our compliance monitoring training. At the end of today's training, we will have an open question and answer session, which we are asking you through the course of the presentation to please provide us an update within the chat box of any questions we can dive further into throughout the presentation. Thank you, and we look forward to hearing from you throughout the presentation. PaTTAN's mission. The mission of the Pennsylvania Training and Technical Assistance Network is to support the efforts and initiatives of the Bureau of Special Education and to build the capacity of the local education agencies to serve students who receive special education services. PDE's commitment to the least restrictive environment. Our goal for each child is to ensure the Individualized Education Program, IEP teams, begin with the general education setting with the use of supplementary aids and services before considering a more restrictive environment. And on to our agenda today. As you can see laid out here on the screen in front of you, we'll do some introductions and updates. We'll dive into our pre-monitoring preparation, what you can expect to see from the facilitated self-assessment, also known as the FSA, and the pre-on-site monitoring review. Following that, we will hear from Leader Services, our partners in this work, in terms of walking you through screen by screen to show you where and how you access the resources that we're going to be discussing during the training. We will take a break. Following the break, we'll do our post-monitoring review and support. And then to close up our morning, we'll be reviewing our PaTTAN website, along with the Schoology courses that have been built throughout the last year's time. And then finally, our monthly training plan and resources that we would like to share with you. So without further ado, my name is Gina Colarossi, and I am the lead for AEDY statewide in this work. I'm joined today by my colleague Jess Keener-Hawes, as well as my colleagues Kat Zimmerman, Stacy Cherney, Bethany Seidella, and our PDE partner, John Esposito. Each member of our team, you may hear us refer to each other as points of contact or POPs. Each member of our AEDY team serves to support your application process, the compliance monitoring, your student referrals, and the reporting processes required by the settlement agreement. We're here to support an oversight and certainly a guidance to you in the field in the implementation of your AEDY programs, whether you're sending to as an LEA school district or charter school, or whether you're receiving as an operating AEDY program. What is AEDY? An AEDY program refers to an individual program site approved by PDE to provide a temporary placement for students who meet the definition of a disruptive student. AEDY programs include approved programs operated by LEAs, a combination of LEAs, or private providers. What is critical with the slide that I have shown you here today is several points of reference. First, AEDY programs must be approved. And so many of you have gone through the process of the last year, and we thank you for continuing to engage us as we are provided new information in the delivery of this work. So it's very important that all AEDY programs be officially approved and accepted within the system. And we will certainly work with those of you who are in that provisional status to get you to that final approved status within the system, and that you receive your letter indicating such. Another key word which I would like to point out this slide is temporary. And so through the course of the last school year, with an online referral system and a day-to-day system that must be kept updated, we want to ensure that the field understands that the regulation requires that this placement be temporary in nature and that it meet the definition of a disruptive student. So let's just talk briefly about disruptive student before we get into our compliance monitoring work today. The disruptive student by public school code, and on the left-hand side, you can see in that green box there, if you're looking to get the exact code reference, you will be provided a copy of this PowerPoint presentation to allow you to access that information once our presentation has been finalized today. So a disruptive student is a student who possesses a clear threat to the safety and welfare of other students or school staff, who creates an unsafe school environment or whose behavior materially interferes with the learning of other students or disrupts the overall educational process. And on to our criteria. There's 6 specific criteria that the regulation in the Pennsylvania Department of Education authorizes our LEAs, our school districts, and our charter schools to evoke in the referral of a student to AEDY. So how is a student eligible for an AEDY program? It must be and fall within one of the 6 criteria listed on your screen. First, a disregard for school authority, that persistent, ongoing violation of school policy and rules. Second, that there be a display of a controlled substance on school property or during school affiliated activities. A controlled substance is defined as a drug or any other substance that meets that criteria. Third, violent or threatening behavior on school property or during school related activities. Fourth, possession of a weapon on school property. The PA Crimes Code, again, if you would like to look at the reference and the definition, we've included it here on the slide for your convenience to be able to take it and copy it and paste it into your search bar. When you have your PowerPoint presentation in front of you, you'll be able to access it at that point. Fifth, a commission of a criminal act on school property. And the 6th and final reason to send to an AEDY program would be a misconduct that would merit suspension or expulsion under a school policy. You'll notice out of the 6 criteria that truancy or academics, neither attendance or academics are reasons for referral into an AEDY program at this point. In May of last year, 2019, the Pennsylvania Department of Education and its patent partner began working towards what you see here on your screen, known as the settlement agreement. The settlement agreement resulted from policies and practices related to its approval of AEDY programs. The complaints that are outlined in the settlement are relevant to the agreement and allege that PDE's policies and practices regarding AEDY programs have led to violations of federal law by its LEAs. So for further detail, I'm going to go into one more slide to talk specifically about the settlement agreement and what and why and how we're delivering these supports to you through the application, referral, monitoring, and some of the other processes that are embedded within those 3 large areas. So first, the settlement agreement required that we develop and implement a compliance monitoring system. So here we are today in year 2 of our compliance monitoring process. And again, we will share with you the specifics of what is required if you received a letter for your year 2 cyclical monitoring. Second, the settlement agreement required that we update our policy guidance specific to the basic ed curricular for AEDY, which has been updated and is posted for your review on PDE's website. And secondary to that would be the AEDY guidelines, which are in the final stages of approval and will be released very shortly. The third is our local in-state complaint process. And for those of you that have gone through our application process and again today within compliance monitoring, you will hear about what is required for the local and state level complaint process. The fourth area that the settlement agreement required was that all documentation and communication be accessible to parents and students to ensure compliance for the information that is being submitted from the LEA. And an example of this accessibility would be that the local complaint process be available in translation and any interpretation if requested by the family for active participation and engagement within the process. And certainly that the family's due process would be held in place. The final area of the settlement agreement that you will hear about today talks about a training plan and to support those technical assistance and training needs that would result in ongoing needs within the field. And many of you, if you have participated in our surveys in the past, or just even on conversations or Zoom meetings with any member of our team, we have asked very explicitly for your feedback. And that feedback is going directly into the development of our training plan for the 2020-21 school year. And so at the end of the presentation today, we'll give you a little bit more information on where to locate those resources. Those resources will be critical to you going through the monitoring process, because you will want to have access to all of the most up-to-date and virtually available and at no cost to you as the LEA or the AEDY program. So the next slide refers to a couple different areas of our application process. And so our application to send to a program requires the following steps be put into place. First, if you are applying to send to an AEDY program, you're going to, through the Leader Services system, you're going to select a program that is geographically within your region and that you support the level of training and instruction that they'll be providing your student in that environment. And so we're at this point making sure that our field is aware of how to go in and look at the status of a program and be able to identify the program design, the electives offered by example, the counseling supports offered, the positive behavior supports that may be offered in that program. And so that when you're selecting a program, you're knowledgeable of what that program has to offer your student before accepting or selecting that program in the AEDY process. Additionally, within our application to send to a program, as well as an application to operate a program and operate an AEDY program, we have what we're referring to as a provisional status. And that provisional status means that you as the LEA or the sending LEA or the AEDY program are actively working with one of the AEDY team members to solidify and work towards an approved or accepted application. If you are doing that work and you're engaging it through the English Learner Plan, through the complaint process, maybe as an AEDY program when working through your MTSS action plans, all of those types of activities we would consider provisional and would apply that status to your application. Critical to know that until you submit and have corrected each of the areas that required additional support, you will not be approved. It's at this point that I would want to reference those LEAs and AEDY programs, primarily sending LEAs who may not have engaged in months in the application process. For those of you that haven't, please know on the screen here today, and you'll receive shortly as well, that we would like for you to reach out, aedy@pattan.net. We will get back to you in a very short course to let you know the person's name and email so that you can restart the process and work towards the approval of your application, whether that be to send to an AEDY program or whether that be to operate an AEDY program. I want to give a big shout out to those who have approved applications. I really want to commend those of you again that have worked through this process. We as team members have worked alongside of you many days as information has come to us. We have readily communicated that to the field and will continue to do so through the course of the next year and years to come. So the final area on the application process is that I want to ensure that we discuss today are new referrals to send to AEDY. Knowing that each section of our state may be under a different delivery of instruction, we want to ensure that everyone continues to engage the online referral system, and that please note that if your application has not been reviewed within the last 2 to 3 months, we are encouraging you to reach out and to let us know so that we can get your point of contact engaged with you so that you're back on the process of getting that application approved. The final area that I want to discuss on our slide today is the assurance statements. And so we've received quite a few questions through the process in terms of I've submitted my application, it has been approved, I've received the email back that says my application has been accepted and approved. It is at that time that we would like for you to sign that assurance statement and electronically return it to us. You may have signed a prior assurance statement through the provisional process, and the reason we ask for you to continue to engage that and sign that assurance statement at the approval or the accepted time is so that we can align your knowledge of and submission of your assurance statement with your final approval of your application. And so at that point, you will have been officially approved in terms of your application, whether that be to send to an AEDY program or to operate one. So let's begin talking about our monitoring cycle and our monitoring process. As I said earlier, you're probably here in our conversation today because you've received a letter, and that letter has indicated that you will be monitored sometime between October and February of this school year. The chairperson or one member of the AEDY team will serve as your lead and your point of contact. You actually may have heard from some of your chair persons through the last 2 weeks so that they're trying to get ready for and set you up with any specific dates and times to meet to review any questions that you may have regarding the monitoring process. Along with the chairperson is a review team. That review team will look at all the documentation assigned by the chairperson during the week of monitoring. Remember, our monitorings are cyclical in nature, meaning that they are randomly selected within a 3-year cycle. We will also do an on-site, what we're referring to as a facility walkthrough. You'll see TBD listed here as to be determined, And when that time occurs, we will be reaching out to the LEAs as well as to the AEDY programs to get your feedback in terms of your district's availability and date and time when it would be appropriate, given the health and safety precautions that are put in place now. We have elected to hold our facility walkthroughs at a later point in this school year to be determined based upon the feedback that we receive from you in the field. The last part of our slide today talks about why we're monitoring. And again, you'll notice some of the legal references throughout our monitoring presentation here today. Again, we provide those to you in case you are interested in looking at or further clarifying what and why we're implementing the compliance monitoring process throughout our AEDY programs. The next 3 slides you'll notice are our monitoring schedule. So we put this here to show the variety of locations across the state that will be monitored this year. We have 19 total. Last school year, we exceeded 36 cyclical monitorings that had occurred. And so we'll continue to work through our 3-year cycle to maximize all AEDY programs and ensure that the implementation of our updated compliance monitoring process is ingrained in each of the approved AEDY programs statewide within that 3-year cycle. So you'll notice in the monitoring schedule that there are several week of dates. And so what will happen is that your chairperson will email the 2 leader services points of contact. First, the primary contact and secondary contact, as well as superintendent, that's listed in the leader services website. It is that, it is those 3 areas, fields that are emailed directly in terms of the information that is here and presented today. So you may say, my secondary point of contact has changed, or my superintendent, we're expecting a new superintendent to start next month. Not a problem. This year, starting in August, we have allowed for the points of contact as well as the staff sections of the application to be updated by you all the time. Meaning that if you had submitted the application prior, you would have had to have waited for that application to have returned in order to have made those updates. We have since opened up these areas to allow for communication to be shifted should you decide that you need to make a change to your primary, secondary, or certainly your superintendent or CEO. Okay, so we wanted to share that little bit of information that actually came to us from several of you last year, and we were able to enact that this summer to get that tested and ready to go for you. So you'll notice here on the monitoring week of schedule, there are several monitorings that have the same date, and that would certainly be because several members of our AEDY team will be individually leading with their teams. So that's not an error when you're looking at the multiple dates that are represented here. Okay, so again, the monitoring schedule is here embedded within 3 slides. And if your LEA or private program or intermediate unit is listed, that would be because we have, again, reached out to you with a letter and we're ready to engage you and implement our compliance monitoring process together.
Hello, my name is George Schneider. I'm with Leader Services, and today I'm going to walk you through the AEDY FSA process. We'll do it from both the AEDY provider as well as the sending LEAs. So first I'm going to log in as a test account. I'm logging in as an AEDY provider, somebody who is being monitored this year. going to go ahead and log in. And the first thing you'll see up at the top, if you are being monitored, you will see a dashboard item that says FSA with a number underneath it. So you're going to want to click the number, and that'll take you to another screen. And if you've been monitored in the past or in the future as this goes on, you'll see all a history of your monitorings on this screen. So right now we just have one monitoring for this school year, 2020. And the first thing you're going to want to do is go into click this link that says AEDY. This is the FSA portion of the monitoring. And on this front screen, there's some information here. You'll see at the top how many days until your FSA is due. Down at the bottom, you'll also see a counter going. Right now it says 38 minutes. It'll count down to 2 minutes, and at that point, if there is zero activity using the web page, a little window will pop up alerting you that you have to save your information or you'll be logged out of the system. If you're away from the computer, you're not going to be able to see the window, and it'll log you out automatically as a security concern. And if you have something entered into any of the fields and it wasn't saved, unfortunately you're going to lose that information. So the big thing that hit on this screen is the contact information right in the middle of the screen. There's a place for you to put a contact name, your title, and an email address. About the middle of the screen, you're going to see this yellow bar. This is a draft version of a document that we're going to go through the different sections and begin to create. Above that, there is the button to take you to the screen to create the draft version of the facilitated self-assessment, as well as that's also the place where you're going to finalize the FSA. On the left here, you'll see a flyout menu that you can pin to the screen, and it's showing different sections. These are all the different sections of the FSA, and we'll go into the first section. You can navigate through the flyout menu, or you can press the Save and Go to Section 1 button on the bottom of the screen. So now we're here in the first section. At the top, it's Positive Behavior Intervention Supports. You can click a link up here, and these are all the standards to be met and the procedures to follow. There's some additional information here, and these are your questions. The questions are written out in blue, and there are a few text fields on this screen where you'll enter any kind of information. And you're not limited to the size of the text box. If I continue to go down, you'll see on the side a little scroll bar up here. And you can put the information in there as much as you want. Down at the bottom of the screen, there's an area for you to upload information into this section. And the upload is section-based. So if you have something that you want to upload into, say, the complaint process, you would do that in the complaints process section. Right now we're in positive behavior, so we're going to upload an item there. So there's a button that says Choose File. It'll open up and you'll navigate to wherever you have something to upload. Choose the file. Give it a description. You don't have to do that, and you'll click the Upload button. And down at the bottom, you'll see the file has been uploaded with the upload date. Down at the bottom of the screen, there are a few buttons here I want to make you aware of. There's Spell Check. There's Save and Go to Next Section, which will save your information and go to the next section. So that will go to Complaint Process if we're on this screen. Save and Stay if you answer one question. Maybe you got a phone call, you want to stay on this section and continue. Once you're done with the phone call, you press the Save and Stay button, and Reset section, which will revert you back to the information that was last saved in the database. So right now I'm going to click the Save and Go to Next Section. So the next section is Complaint Process. Same thing here. A couple text boxes for you to fill out some information. There's the next section, Section 3, Parent and Student Communication. some more information here. Disproportionate placement, next section. English learners. This section has a area to upload. Special education in AEDY programs is the sixth section. And finally, periodic review and exit criteria. So once you're done with every section, or even part way done, and you want to see all your answers in a PDF, maybe you want to share it with a colleague, someone who's helping out with this process, you can go here and click the draft FSA. There's two areas, there's a green and there's a red. The red section has a checkbox, and there will be a button appearing here starting September 15th that will say Finalize FSA. If you click that, it sends an email to whoever is in the email address entered on the main page, as well as several other people within PDE and PaTTAN. For right now, we're going to click the draft FSA. You'll see down here at the bottom, it says draft FSA, has today's date, has today's time. If I click the link, it gives you a PDF version of everything you entered. Quickly scroll through this. So that's the FSA part of it. We're going to move on to interviews. There's several interviews that have to be completed for this process. And we'll walk it through. Go back to the home page, click the FSA number, and there's an interviews link. And there are several interviews, demographic information, which is just asking for contact name, contact phone, email, address, staff, program director interview. If you're the director of the program, you'll fill out this information: name, position, length of time in the program, credentials, certifications, job duties. It asks you several questions about, such as since the beginning of the school year, how many physical restraints occurred in the program. You'll put a number in there. Open-ended questions such as describe the communication with parents, guardians, and their involvement in the student's AEDY programming. You'll put some text in here. What professional development training topics have been offered to staff over the past 2 years? And they give you some here. If you have taken CPR, maybe first aid, just check the check boxes. If there's something else that's not listed here, you can enter it into the other. Down at the bottom, there are areas that are working in the program, areas that you feel require improvement. Fill out the information, and there's a save information button and a cancel button. And then down here in the middle, there's these access codes. Now, we have a separate website for the interviews. So if you have anybody that is maybe a regular ed teacher, special ed teacher, ESL teacher, maybe counselors, students, this is the information you're going to want to give them. So this is an important page. So maybe you can copy it, put it in an email, send it to the person that you want to complete the survey, as well as the links. The links are here. There's a link for a parent survey. There's also a link for all the other surveys. They're separated between parent and all the others. So we're going to do a regular ed teacher interview. I'll show you that. So I can just click this link. I enter in the access code, and this is the teacher interview. So they'll put in their first name, last name, their grade level, subjects, credentials, how many years of teaching experience do they have. There's other questions. Do you feel safe in the program? Do you feel respected in the program? And also ask them about the professional development training that they have taken. Areas that are working in a program, areas that require improvement, and is there anything you would like us to know that we did not ask? And they would save the information. And you, if you want to see who has completed the surveys, you can click the links above. So in this case, 2 people have completed the teacher surveys, and you're not going to be able to see what their answers are. Only people at PDE and PaTTAN have access to those answers. There's also a parent survey, which does not need an access code. All they would do is you would send the parents this link, is leaderservices.com/_AEDY parent survey, and it'll take them to this screen. They'll choose either English or Spanish, and they will choose the provider and begin survey. And this is the information that the parents would fill out. That once it's submitted, PDE and PaTTAN have access to those answers as well. They ask things such as last school attended, length of time in the program, date of birth, its grade level. Like the first question, my child's placement in AEDY program was the result of the use of controlled substances, violent or threatening behavior, and/or possession of a weapon that occurred on school property or during school-affiliated activities. So they would click yes or no, and depending on how they answer, they move either question 3 or question 2. And they'll go through the survey and answer all the questions that need to be answered. Here we have student records. If you click here, you're going to see all the students that are and what status they are with the provider. You can see here Joe Smith, he's been accepted back to the LEA, a couple closed records, in process record. And you can also, if there's uploaded documents, you can click here. All the upload documents. You can also, there's also an upload tool here where you choose the file, a drop down for the type of file, and they range from ERRR, IEP team invite, IEP revised IEP, manifest determination, no rep, FBA, and so on and so on. You can upload those documents. Also, the sending LEA can also enter or upload those documents as well. And when they're uploaded through the sending LEA, they're accessible through this screen as well. So right now, we're going to switch over and log in as a sending LEA. So each sending LEA has to complete a survey. So that is found at the top of the screen here. And if you send to multiple providers, you'll have multiple surveys to fill out. So in this case, Mercury Area School District sends to a provider called Alabama. So they see that here. And the user will click the Please Complete Survey link. I've already started one. You have name, title, email address goes in here. Explain your job duties in relation to the AEDY. Explain the referral process and supports to the AEDY program to include, but not limited to, the following areas. They're listed here. Describe how you provide supports and services to students who are English learners and students with disabilities within the AEDY program. And they'll go through and answer all the questions, including areas that are working, areas that require improvement, and if they have additional comments, they'll enter it in this box. And on the bottom, you see cancel and return, save, and submit survey. The person filling out the survey, because it is a little bit longer, they do have the opportunity to start it and hit save, and then come back at a later time to finish the survey. But once they have everything filled out that they need to fill out, they would simply click the Submit Survey. Another area that is on this screen is the Access FSA link. So the sending LEA can see the information that has been entered into the FSA on the provider side. So we're going to enter that now. They can't touch any, or they can't edit anything. All they have is view-only access to it. They can't create a document. They can't change any information. They can just step through the FSA and take a look at any of the information that has been entered. So instead of the Save buttons on the bottom, they just have Go to Next Section, Continue to Next Section buttons. But they can see everything that was entered in here by the provider. And as a sending provider, you can go into here, the button here, Referrals created by your LEA. Here we have student, we'll pick this William Gill. Go into the verification section, and here is an area that they can upload documents. Once documents are uploaded in this area, the provider has access to them for anything that they need to pull out from those documents. All right, I'm going to log back into the provider. So once the FSA has been submitted to the state side, they'll go through and look for anything that is maybe out of compliance, anything that they have questions about, and once they get everything sorted, they'll create a set of documents. And I'm just going to change something on so we can see additional information. And once PDE has created the documents, they will release those documents back to the provider. And then additional information is available to you at that point. You'll get a letter of findings. You'll get an executive summary, which summarizes everything that they've found with all the information that they've gone through. And an ICAP. So these are issues that they will have to get corrected on a per student basis. There's also an area to upload documents, which works the same way as the other upload area. Here's today's uploaded document. And there's another section, requested documentation. So here you'll see everything that is in compliant, not compliant, it'll be shown here, and if there is any corrective action that needs to be done, that will show in this box as well. We have links on the side here, so we'll say EL teacher credentials background check. So if I click that, that'll take me actually into the application. So if something has to be corrected in the application, say a background checks, say something was, the dates had to get changed in here because they're past due, you can go in and easily change them in here. So these links will take you to different parts of the FSA, like licenses, it'll take you to licenses. Partnerships, it'll take you to partnerships if something has to get corrected there. And there's our walkthrough for the monitoring process. Good luck. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jessica Haas, and I'm another member of the AEDY team. This year, I will be a chairperson for several monitorings. In the next section of our presentation, I'm going to walk you through the pre-monitoring process. This includes FSA, surveys, interviews, and the required related documents related to formal periodic review. FSA, survey, interviews, record reviews, and 45-day reviews are all pieces of the pre-monitoring process. We're going to ask you, if you are an AEDY program, to go ahead and sign on to Leader so you can follow along with the remainder of this presentation. Using a web browser, you're going to log into Leader Services, and on the dashboard, you're going to click FSA. I'm going to give you a few seconds to get to this point. Once you've clicked on FSA, the number 1, it's going to take you to the next screen, which asks, where the arrow is, asks you to click on AEDY. This will get you to your facilitated self-assessment. What is a facilitated self-assessment, or we refer to it often as an FSA? It's a process where the Alternative Education for Disruptive Youth program reflects and reviews on current policies, practices, and procedures. Collaborative discussions should occur to hone in on areas that need to be revised and processes that need to be improved in the program. The PDE, PaTTAN AEDY team will review all of the information compiled into the FSA and determine if the program needs further support in the form of training and technical assistance. The 7 areas that we look at are MTSS positive behavior support, complaint, parent-student communication, disproportionate representation, English learners, special education, and formal periodic review. Each area requires multiple essay-type answers. The AEDY team will review the responses carefully to determine whether or not the response is sufficient to meet compliance requirements. So you're going to review the standard for each topic. You're going to follow the procedure titled AEDY program procedure for each topic, and you're going to gather the required data. You're going to conduct team discussions inclusive of your sending LEA for some sections. You're going to review the discussion points provided, and you're going to complete the written data collection summary in the format provided. And where specified, you're going to upload policies, procedures, and files. These questions will also frame further discussion at the administrative interview at the culmination of monitoring. So we're going to show you what we're talking about in the next slide and how to get there. So this is an example of the MTSS FSA section. You're going to click here for standards to be met and procedures to be followed. That's going to take you to the next screen. We'll expand each question detailing what must be answered and reviewed to determine compliance. Some sections have more areas to be reviewed than others. So just ensure that you read these for each section and are able to answer every question included. We're going to move on to MTSS and positive behavior support. This section requires your team to review your MTSS positive behavior support framework and what is currently in place. It requires the team to spend some time reviewing process, procedure related to behavior within the AEDY setting. All programs are required to submit an action plan based on the individual needs for training to improve their systems. This action plan should be used as documentation for trainings related to MTSS. And as we proceed throughout the year, our team will be verifying that those trainings occurred and asking for evidence to show that the trainings were completed. The Department of Justice receives reports regularly from our team outlining what programs are doing to enhance their practices regarding the implementation of a multi-tiered system of support. The PaTTAN team is coordinating webinars, courses, and various other training opportunities to ensure the field can meet this compliance requirement. Then we look at, in that section, we're going to look at the review of training for your staff in requirement for the behavior training. We have to ensure that staff is trained under Chapter 14, Section 133. We're going to be looking at a restraint log, and it must include all the necessary requirements for restraint for the Bureau of Special Education. And then we're going to look at your policy, and it must be up to date. It has to include all the necessary requirements for Chapter 14, Section 133 under positive behavior supports. This would have been reviewed in the application, and if you have an approved application, all you need to do is upload your restraint policy in the FSA, and you should be complete. And then finally, we're going to look at your counseling logs. AEDY programs, in-house and private providers, are responsible for maintaining an up-to-date counseling record. The counseling record should include, at minimum, student attendance, group topics, name of the counselor leading the group, the date, and the start and stop times for each group session.
And Jess, I'm just going to add here, and please correct me if the practice is different, but let's just say I am an AEDY program and I don't yet have an MTSS positive behavior support framework in place. Is the expectation from the chairperson that I upload the training plan or action plan that I'm currently working on through the school year? Should I leave that blank? How would you recommend I do that?
Please upload the action plan you're currently working on, outlining all of the areas that you need support, ensuring that you're going to be able to evidence that your training is going to occur throughout the year. So whatever you put in that action plan, you're going to ensure that that is going to be completed and evidenced throughout the year for our team.
Great. The next area of the facilitated self-assessment is the complaint process. And through the course of the settlement agreement, which I had outlined earlier in presentation, the actual local complaint process and state complaint process was new to our field last year at this time. Again, if you have an application that has been approved and accepted by the AEDY team and leader services, that information in English and in Spanish is simply uploaded to this section. But let me go further and explain what is detailed and required within the facilitated self-assessment. So the expectation is that the AEDY program will review their local complaint process from the last school year through present. And this is the process that they provided to PDE along with their LEA. And they will complete the data summary from the previous school year through present. The AEDY program will also inform the student, their parents and guardians, and any stakeholders of their local complaint process and identify how they are meeting the local resolution process in terms of complaint. The AEDY program will also make that local complaint process fully accessible in language and translation, and any necessary modifications that the stakeholder or student or parent, guardian, any member of that child's team that's requesting that information, that be made available to them. The next area is that the AEDY program will review complaints and work with those individuals who filed the complaint to resolve all necessary issues. So what we're asking in this section is for you to upload those policies and procedures that you have identified, again, either through your application, approved and accepted, Or if you're still working on that application and you have drafted what is necessary, we want to see that through the monitoring process so we can determine that you're compliant and moving in the correct direction towards completing this new component of our monitoring process. In the facilitated self-assessment, we ask that you review each question and document your response. And my colleague has mentioned that earlier in how to complete the facilitated self-assessment in each of those 7 sections. What's critical here is that we're having a conversation about what and how you do things within your program, AEDY program, and the sending LEAs, how you interact through that process of the implementation of your AEDY program. So this section is specific to complaint, verifies whether or not you have received a complaint. If you have not, and that information is simply we have not received a written complaint from any of our stakeholders, you would still need to fill out each of those sections because we review the process and certainly your procedures by which all complainants, again, they may include students, they may include parents or guardians, and any stakeholder that has concerns regarding specific aspects of the AEDY program, unique to our English learners, our students with disabilities, and really any placement or exiting decisions, academic instruction, the provision of or omission of language assistance services, which I mentioned earlier in terms of translation, services specific to students with disabilities, and any reasonable modifications that are requested through this process. So this section of the FSA focuses on those areas that you may or may not have had to deal with within the last school year through present, but we're still asking as the chairperson to be able to evaluate your policy and your procedure in doing so. The next area of the facilitated self-assessment is really a critical area of our interaction and involvement with you through the monitoring process. It's also, I would say, been part of our guidance and support through the last year of this new work with AEDY. So our parent, guardian, and stakeholder communication with our students as well. We're looking at 3 solid areas, and we're asking you to do the same. Review your communication practices with parents and students. Many of you have an internal committee or supported parent meeting structure that you have within your program. This is where we would expect to see that information within your facilitated self-assessment. You may decide that that's something that you want to do as a result of needing more support in this area as well. The second area of parent-student communication is that we're asking you to review parent participation. Parent participation right from the start in terms of that student's intake and review of their documentation upon entering the program, right through their exit and their formal periodic review and transition back to the general education environment. The final area we're looking for information from you in this facilitated self-assessment is to review the trainings that you offer to parents. Do you offer a skill set of trainings related to your counseling offerings for students? Do you offer additional services or supports outside of your program that would benefit the students' success and return to the general education environment? So we're looking for those connections that you have made with parents and students to be able to validate that this area is compliant. So by example, what do you do to ensure good communication between your parents and your students? Provide that documentation. How have you attempted to get parent participation specifically in the formal periodic review meetings? What methods have been successful or not in creating that engagement with parents? There are just a few examples of questions that will allow you as the team to further develop that facilitated self-assessment and give your chairperson and the AEDY team a better understanding of what and how you operate your AEDY program. The next area of the facilitated self-assessment is called disproportionate representation. Again, we have three areas that we're looking at. We're looking at the identified data, which comes annually. Last year was our baseline. Our initial data coming into our referral system and the documentation of students entering AEDY and remaining in placement and through exit is collected through the Leader Services referral system. So we are collecting that baseline data annually. We're looking at that data year over year. Last year, 19-20 school year being year one, and this year being year two in the beginning of this work. And then the last area that we are focusing on, whether you're disproportionate or not in terms of your data, is ensuring that our AEDY team and our colleagues are providing training and technical assistance to avoid any disproportionate representation before it occurs. And so disproportionate representation is also known as disproportionality. It refers to the overrepresentation of a given population or demographic group. By example, race, ethnicity, our students with disabilities, gender. LEAs and AEDY programs are going to review their annual data to determine if they demonstrate disproportionate placement of students who are students with disabilities, or students who are English learners, or students who are among racial subgroup populations. As a reminder to our teams here today, students with disabilities must not be unnecessarily segregated into specific AEDY programs because of their disability. I highlight that specific statement because it comes from the settlement agreement and the work that we are providing to the field over the next few years. So what we would like for you to do in this section is for the LEA and the AEDY program to discuss those points that are outlined in this section and begin to develop and sustain your discussions among all members of the team. We want to see these data points and collection in the summary to evaluate whether or not your team has begun to think about who's referred to AEDY and under any of the subgroups that were mentioned earlier. Finally, I want to say that training and technical assistance is going to be provided to all to ensure that any LEA or AEDY program that begins to have a baseline number, or in year two, an elevation in that number, will be able to access the resources that they need to train and support their teams.
English learners. So the first thing we'd like you to do is you're going to review your procedures to ensure translation, transcription, and/or interpreting services should a parent need that level of accommodation. We started to go into this in your English learner plans as we've been reviewing and providing feedback throughout the year regarding your English learner plans. We ask you to stipulate these things so there is a smooth procedure in place should you need one throughout the school year. Our team is reviewing and verifying that that information is clearly outlined in a procedure. The procedure typically looks like an assigned person at the program, whether it's a teacher or an administrator, who is responsible for the coordination of those accommodations should they be necessary. We'll contact the LEA, we'll contact a service or provider that's contingent upon the level of the language that is needed to discuss with parents any necessary information. We also want you to carefully review your English learner plan. It should be an annual review. If there are revisions necessary, you should be making those after you've facilitated an English learner plan for the year. You could see if there's areas that need further, you become more explicit, in your plan. So the coordination of those services are very smooth. And then finally, this year, we added the upload for the individual English learner plan. If a student is a current English learner, It is a requirement under the referral now that individualized English learner plan is uploaded. So all parties understand what that child needs in terms of service, in type and amount, as well as outlining some of the accommodations necessary for that student to be successful in the AEDY program. Special education. In this section, it is critical for AEDY programs and individual sending LEAs to consider their policies, procedures, and practices related to placing and or accepting students with disabilities in an AEDY program. Manifestation reviews need to be conducted. Regulation 300-530E. It stipulates that students with disabilities are required to have a manifestation determination review. This is inclusive of students who have a 504 plan. Let me repeat that. This is inclusive of students who have a 504 plan. The regulations go on further to note that under special circumstances, students who have had a drug, alcohol, weapon, or serious bodily injury violation may be placed in an interim alternative education setting for 45 days. However, you still need to complete a manifestation determination review and ensure FAPE is provided on the 46th day. We're going to go through 300-530 special circumstances, as I previously mentioned, drugs, alcohol, weapon, and serious bodily injury, because I want to define serious bodily injury for you. The regulatory definition is bodily injury which creates a substantial risk of death or which causes serious, permanent disfigurement or protracted loss or impairment of the function of any bodily member or organ. It's critical, if you note that it was a serious bodily injury infraction, that it meets this threshold. Finally, we want to ensure that sending LEAs and AEDY programs are in constant communication in terms of paperwork. So it is necessary for all paperwork to be provided to the AEDY program prior to the student being seated, so that that child's FAPE is implemented from day one of being seated in the program. This way, the program is able to review the documents and ensure that the student's FAPE will be provided. Finally, the Bureau of Special Education works in tandem with the AEDY team and will be reaching out to provide any further guidance on the expectation for students with IEPs as we complete the compliance process. The next section is the formal periodic review. The AEDY team last year recognized that there were several different required paperwork involved in AEDY. So we decided to combine the 3 documents to one in an effort to streamline information for the AEDY programs. So we combined the behavior plan, 45-day review, and the exit plan. You'll note that we changed the language from transition to exit plan. The document has all the required components for our compliance review. In preparation, it is imperative within each panel, a 45-day review is completed for students while they're in the AEDY setting. The formal periodic review is designed to ensure collaboration with the AEDY program and sending LEA, honing in on specific student goals and needs for support. This framework allows the AEDY setting to provide tiered support necessary to allow students to make progress towards their goals. These goals need to be measurable for the team to determine whether or not the student should remain in placement. Our team recommends the use of SMART goals, goals that are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-based. Goals for academics are allowable. However, they may not be the reason that the student remains in the AEDY setting. If all of the components of the documents are used to ensure all members are collaborating for the support of the student, it should support a very smooth exit back to general education. We recommend using the annotated version of this document to help answer any questions you may have as your team shift to the use of this document. Both versions are available on the Leader site. Now that we've completed the FSA review, we're going to talk about the interviews. It's necessary for all staff members to complete the interview. We suggest starting the interview process early. We have a QR code on the screen right now, and if you're not familiar with them, you simply put your cell phone in front of the QR code. You may have to open your camera. If you have an iPhone, you will not, and it will automatically send you right to the interview section on the Leader site. We also have the links right here for you. You're going to ensure that a parent survey is conducted. You're going to share that information widely with parents. We need parent participation so that it helps frame our training and technical assistance in the future, as well as yours. We're going to include behavior specialists or all staff members. So previously, if you were monitored last year, we didn't explain that as clearly as, and in reflection, we have added that note this year, is all staff members need to complete the interview for our team to be able to know, particularly in a virtual environment, know all parties working with students. And then finally, the student survey. The students are required to complete the survey as well. Please note that if we do not see the staff member interviews in the system, we will call and follow up with staff to complete these interviews. We will also follow up with parents and students if their interviews are not completed in our system.
So just by example, I know one of the experiences that we had last year, and last year was a great starting point for our team in that, you know, we reflected upon the things that were discussed with us during the monitoring process by our teams, our LEAs, and our AEDY programs. One of the things that I think we experienced quite a bit was we were told, what if the staff member is not a member of our AEDY program and team, but they're employed by, let's just say, the LEA, and by example, the English learner, the ESL certified teacher. So our expectation in the monitoring process is that that ESL teacher, even though they're not employed by the AEDY program, we're looking inclusively at all the staff and services, whether they're contracted or not, whether they're employed by. So one of the things I just wanted to mention to kind of get ahead of some of the concerns that the field had last year was to say that this is fully accessible, and that the responsibility of the LEA and the AEDY team is that, inclusive of all staff, that they be entered and they have entered interviews in this monitoring process.
Yeah, great point, because all parties, yes. And again, starting this process early is to your benefit. There is no quote time, so it just begins as soon as we open up the FSA. You can begin this process, and we encourage you to do so. The next area is the LEA survey. So many LEAs have emailed me and said, what is my role in this process? Well, you have multiple roles, but this is a distinct piece of the process. You will complete the LEA survey, which has 10 questions, and it asks you basically how you coordinate with the AEDY program, how you ensure students are receiving their services, whether they're students with disabilities or not. Chapter 4 requirements. It discusses the plethora of regulatory requirements for a student to be placed in an AEDY program. So you complete that, and again, that will be open day one. After this presentation, you'll be able to access that, And again, we encourage you to do that pretty quickly so that our team can review it and determine where we may need to provide further training and technical assistance. This information is very helpful for us as we move forward to help all programs grow. So,
just as a point of notice, Jess, the LEA survey is actually located on the dashboard of the LEA. So they will see it there and be able to go in and enter, define all 10 questions and save and submit the survey once. So it is located on the dashboard of that Sending LEAs Leader Services sign up.
Click the next screen. So here's the example of exactly that. This is what it looks like. This is the top half of the screen, and you're going to have to note all of your information. And please be thorough in explaining your job duties related to AEDY. We really want to thoroughly understand what your role is when a student gets placed in an AEDY setting. And if you can further note at the bottom of it, if you need further support from us, we'll happily provide it. The next screen is, this is the parent survey. So it's provided to all families who are in placement. Your team will provide this to families. They will need to identify the AEDY program. As you can see, it's just a simple drop down and then a button to click to begin the survey. We encourage you to share this with your families early and possibly often so that we can get the results of that survey and get that feedback. I think on the next screen is the QR code. So if you want to have that readily available, you can share the QR code if that's easier for families to access it on their mobile devices.
And this was an area, Jess, that we had developed midway through last year in terms of just making sure that any parent or family survey was fully accessible on a smartphone. And so that we found great results from those compliance monitorings that resulted from there. So we encourage the AEDY programs to rely on the technology, please, because the families actively engaged it for us, and we were greatly pleased with that.
Yes.
The next two slides refer to a checklist that Jess and I have created for you to be able to assist you during, but also after the completion of your FSA. So while it says completing your FSA, we intend for you to use the next two slides as you're tracking, as you're going through each of the areas. And so Jess had walked through the facilitated self-assessment, one for positive behavior support and MTSS. And so each of those check boxes there further outline the slides and discussion points that we went through today. Again, you know, we added this as a tool and a checkpoint for the AEDY programs prior to submitting their FSA. It is not a surprise in terms of what we're looking for. So we wanted to make sure we were explicit and provided you a guide to do that. The PDF of the next two slides, and so you're looking at the first, FSA 1 through 3, and here's the second, FSA 4 through 7. So these two slides are a single PDF document, which will be available on Leader Services on that FSA page once you enter to be able to save, print off, do what you need to do with your team members, divide it in half because you have multiple team members completing your FSA, and to ensure that you have all the data necessary and are ready to go for your submission. If you have any questions regarding the facilitated self-assessment, please refer them to your AEDY compliance monitoring chairperson. Okay, she will be able to provide assistance and any clarifications needed towards your submission. That individual, your chairperson, would have emailed you your letter if you were part of cohort 2 in our compliance monitoring for AEDY in the 2021 school year. Okay, all FSA items, we ask that they be submitted within the system no later than the close of business the Wednesday prior to the week of. Again, the reason that we're looking to do this is to ensure that you have all your data and information. So we're asking you in year 2 to kindly get ahead and make sure that you have all the documents secured. And if you don't, or there's some confusion, we're here to support you. Please reach out to your chairperson. Okay, the next area you have heard about throughout the last year and even into this school year, and we refer to it as what we called roster reconciliation. So roster reconciliation is confirming in the Leader Services system who has been in process, in placement, and has exited the AEDY program. As you're all aware, the referral system, which was piloted 2 years ago and implemented last year in year 1, is a real-time system in the fact that a student may not be seated in placement if they are not in the system. So let me rephrase that. Every student who's in placement must be in the system. Okay, and so what we're looking for in the roster reconciliation when we are completing those record reviews and prior to going through all the documentation on our side, we ask of the LEAs sending and the AEDY programs to go through their roster of who's currently in placement. Again, all rosters are expected to be up to date based upon who's seated in placement in the AEDY program. The monitoring process, it reviews all students who are in placement. We do not spend a great deal of time looking at those students who have exited and successfully returned to the general education environment in the process of completing our record reviews. We do look at that data obviously throughout the compilation of who has been admitted to AEDY, but we don't look at them in terms of their formal periodic review, their assessment, and all the data information that is required in the record review process. So you'll see on your screen, it says what to do now, what to do 2 weeks prior to, what to do 1 week prior to. While that may be, while that may be a little confusing in terms of what to have in place, I will tell you that the what to do now, effective today, September 15th, is the same as what to do 1 week prior to monitoring. So we intentionally created this slide to be redundant with you in the field, in that any student who's in placement, it's a real-time system. So if for some reason, you have had a changeover in staff, you've had some other things, this is the time now, effective today in September, to update your roster. If the student is no longer in placement, you're going to exit that student with the same procedure you used from last school year. Okay, and so that record review process that we do looks at students who are in placement and further evaluates what documentation is or isn't present for the student. At which point each of those areas, and we're going to discuss this a little bit further, Jess will, in terms of any of those areas within the record review that are incomplete or who are possibly blank upon the submission, which, to state obviously they shouldn't be if they apply to the student, that those areas be corrected. So the week of monitoring, what are we doing on our side as the chairperson? We're doing really 3 solid things with your record reviews in the real-time system. First, we're confirming the roster with you. We have already at that point probably gone through every record, and if we haven't, the early part of that monitoring week of process, every record review is gone through at least once. Documentation is held on our side in the system to determine compliant or not in terms of having the information there. I'll give you an example. The informal signatures. That is a responsibility of the LEA, and so we would expect that that upload be present and that informal signatures be within the system for the record review. If for some reason they're not, this is the time prior to the monitoring that the LEA and the AEDY program need to solidify the student's records with all the required components. So I just provide that as one example. There's a multitude of examples that we look for in terms of verifying the documentation and ensuring that the student's due process and record is whole. The second area that we're doing during that week of monitoring in terms of rosters and verification of students and staff is looking at the facilitated self-assessment, as we spent some time doing earlier today. As Jess mentioned, going through the interviews and surveys and ensuring that each staff person that was accounted for in the application and that was accounted for in the upload of staffing present and students present during the monitoring, that they all had a voice in completing the monitoring process. And then the final area, which is, I will say, part of our during monitoring week activity, is to do an administrative interview where jointly we are with our sending LEAs and our AEDY programs, engaging the data and information that you provided to us. It gives me as the chairperson an opportunity to clarify, to further evaluate what and how you have indicated that you're operating or sending to an AEDY program. So here's a few screenshots just to kind of walk through where we look at each of the data elements. And so clicking on the Student Records tab will allow you to go through the monitoring side to evaluate what's in the student referral. And you'll be able to upload, and I'll show you the next screen here. You can see the in the next screen here, the student record review, and you'll be able to view those upload documents and be able to confirm that everything is there for the students who are, again, in placement. Okay. This next slide further identifies what to do when they're not. Okay, so if you go through the documentation and you see that you're missing a file upload for an area, what you need to do in looking at this slide is you use the drop-down menu in section A. You'll be selecting the type of file that is needed for upload. You'll use the text box to provide information in terms of how to identify that. That area in section C is very important to us. And here's why. If you're a program that maybe was very heavily into paper and you had not spent a great deal of time early on last school year on a student who is there and maybe through an expulsion, and that student's record is not whole yet within the system, it is critical that this be used to confirm the student's record review. We ask that you are explicit in terms of the document and the name of the document that you put in to the letter C identified here. And then last but not least, don't forget to upload. So many times we will see that there's a document there and we will go back and forth with the AEDY program and they will, gently say it's there and we don't see it. So please verify before you leave this page that the document is there and uploaded. And what happens is it will release to the box beneath this in the system to allow you to see that it's been uploaded.
Okay, we have just walked you through the pre-monitoring process and the week of process. And now we're going to talk about corrective action. What happens after? Our team has 30 days to input the data from the time we finish your administrative interview until it has to be submitted in the system. Whereas after those 30 days or prior, you'll receive a completed report. Corrective action comes in two forms. Corrective action comes at the individual student level, and it also comes at the procedural, or we often refer to as the systemic level. The follow-up for us will include action planning or training planning. So the follow-up always includes training. So the next screen walks you through what our requirements are. So just as I mentioned, within 30 days, we're going to provide you the individual student corrective action. We call it the ICAP. Within the ICAP for each student, we list the specific areas necessary for us to provide to us for corrective action for us to close that student. Can I have the next screen? So who's responsible? Corrective action is shared between the program and the sending LEA. Both parties must put procedures in place to ensure students receive their due process rights. So under PA Code 12.8, formal and informal hearing, we need to see that the signatures have been uploaded. So in order to remedy this, you would have to ensure the programs are the only parties to have the ability to upload corrective action at this point in time. So therefore, if it's a signature that was missed in the student record in the upload, you would have to provide that to the program to close out this individual student corrective action, because they have the ability to upload. Under CFR 300-530, we have the manifestation determination review. We ask you for this date in the referral, and it will not let you submit the referral without it. However, the documentation needs to also be uploaded. As LEAs, programs have procedures in place to verify that this all occurred, or should have procedures in place to ensure that this all occurred prior to accepting the student in the AEDY program. As LEAs continue to become familiar with the LEADER system and the information necessary to complete a referral, programs must also be reviewing inputted information and verify the behavior infractions meet the regulatory criteria for AEDY. LEAs must expand on the detail of the administrative and guided supports for students placed under criteria 1 and 6. Students who are placed without documentation of interventions cited, that could be an area of corrective action. So for example, you have a student who had a behavioral infraction within school, or multiple, we hope, multiple behavioral infractions. Those should be listed in the behavior of concern, as well as all of the interventions the administrative team or the counseling team has done to try to support this student prior to their placement in AEDY. If all of that information is not filled out clearly for our team to review within the referral, it will be a citation for that individual student. If you cannot provide information that you did not upload, if it's nowhere to be found, then the corrective action is training. So your team would have to go through training in our Schoology system that readily goes over all of positive behavior supports and interventions and learning about the proper way to fill out the referral. So it's twofold. SAP referrals should be completed for students who have drug and alcohol violation. This referral should occur prior to placement. However, an LEA can complete a SAP referral while the student is in an AEDY placement in order to remedy the corrective action for the student. You also must share the evidence of the referral within the LEADER system to close that child's corrective action. Individual English learner plans. We previously discussed individual English learner plans and how they are now a requirement in the referral process for a student listed as a current English learner. LEAs will not be able to submit a referral unless this upload is completed. If this is a citation, because it is incomplete, or requires some identified revision because our team will be reviewing these carefully, you'll be required to revise the document and upload it in the leader system to close that individual student corrective action. Formal periodic reviews. With the implementation of the updated system last year, many programs struggled with the adjustment of uploading these documents every 45 days. This is necessary for our continued oversight of students in AEDY programs. The 45-day formal periodic review must occur at the 45th day of the individual student placement. So it is not a quarterly review. It is based on the date the student was placed and their presumptive exit dates. The upload should occur immediately after these meetings occur. So do not wait a week to upload your 45-day review, as our team will be reviewing this information throughout the school year. If a student was expelled, even for the year, there should be 4 45-day formal periodic reviews in the system. While AEDY is a temporary placement, the goals of AEDY are to provide significant supports for students to reduce or extinguish behaviors that got the student placed in AEDY. The question that came up last year is, if the student just had a 45-day review and that was uploaded in the system, and our team determined that it didn't meet compliance requirements, what do we do? Do we do another 45-day review? And the answer is you revise your 45-day review and you upload in the exact same panel. You do not add a panel because it will alter the presumptive exit dates and the student will be inaccurate in the system. So you're going to upload it, the new revised 45-day review, and you're going to title it just that: Johnny Smith, the date, revised formal periodic review in the system. This way, our team can go right in and look and find the revisions and determine if it meets compliance requirements. Also, please note that we will not accept something that has not been revised or does not meet the criteria outlined in the formal periodic review. For example, if the citation was related to measurable goals and the revised version still does not have measurable goals, our team will not close out that corrective action until that citation is remedied. Counseling records. This one came up a lot last year as well, so I want to clearly define. Each child should have individual counseling records for the supports they received while in the AEDY setting. This must include the date, time, counselor's name, and a brief overview of the topical area. We would expect that the focus of the child's counseling to be in alignment with their behavior of concern. So for example, they have a drug violation. We would expect to see some reference to drugs and alcohol within the context of their counseling supports, review of behavior of concern. And then finally, we know that the behavior of concern should align with the goals. I want to provide a non-example of Johnny brought a weapon to school. Johnny will not bring a weapon into school. That is not an appropriate goal. So consider why Johnny brought a weapon to school in the creation of your goals. Delve back into your assessment that you completed for that child and align where that child would gain, where they would gain the most from a goal in terms of choices, in terms of supports, communication with peers. The list is ongoing. But consider that, and if you have questions regarding that, please reach out to your point of contact or your chairperson, and they will help you through that if you're struggling with what that looks like in terms of the formal periodic review. So the uploads, here's where they go. Just as I had mentioned, we're going to retitle any issue as a revised 45-day review. Once you've completed the process, as we note here, please do not click on ready to be exited unless you want that presumptive exit date to be moved another 45 days. AEDY programs are responsible for corrective action timelines. So again, as I mentioned before, you have 30 days after the on-site, I have 30 days after the on-site monitoring to provide you that corrective action and what it looks like. What's your evidence of change? What do you have to do to meet compliance requirements? Chairpersons are readily in contact with the AEDY programs throughout this process, helping and supporting them to define what that looks like at an individual level. So you're going to upload any updated policies, any updated procedures, and all non-student data in this section for corrective action uploads. As soon as you upload them, our team has the ability to go in there and refer to it. We also suggest you let us know when you've made some corrections so that we have the ability to go in and close out corrective action in a timely manner. You will have 30 days to complete all corrective action after you receive the final report. And that's a critical piece. Make sure you're putting that on your calendar. The only caveat to the completion of the 30 days corrective action is if you have an ongoing training plan or action plan that requires more time. For example, MTSS action plans obviously won't be completed in 30 days. However, the evidence would be that you are working towards the completion of that plan throughout the course of minimally a year, and you're citing the evidence for our team to review that you are engaged in training and technical assistance to improve your positive behavior support framework.
And just to emphasize and validate what Jess has just said in terms of the individual corrective action specific to students is a 30-day turnaround. And the reason you may think, wow, that's a really short period of time. AEDY programs are intended to be temporary. And so the turnaround of time in that presumptive exit date is that you as the AEDY program and sending LEA may decide that the student has met their behavioral goals prior to that 45-day presumptive date. And so we want to ensure you that we will work with you certainly to train and to support. And certainly, you've seen your screenshots here in terms of where and how to upload information in this process. It is critical that we keep whole all the elements of our regulation and our compliance here, in addition to the settlement agreement, while you're implementing your AEDY programs and sending to. So again, we thank you for your diligence to this. We do understand the short turnaround in time. However, as we've discussed with cohort 1, it is to the benefit of the student and every member of that student's team that we keep and support our timelines in this process.
So where do I locate my reporting from the compliance monitoring? And it will populate right there where the arrow is showing you, and you're going to have PDFs, the letter, the executive summary, which outlines the areas of the FSA non-compliance. And then you'll also get another document, the ICAP, which outlines each student's individual corrective action, and it breaks it out in each component where corrective action is necessary.
So just a few more parts to our presentation today. First, we have an active training plan. Our AEDY team, inclusive of all team members and our PaTTAN colleagues, support the AEDY work. We also understand that the AEDY work carries over to many other areas of our initiatives and supports to the field. And so recognizing that our training plan for our field is inclusive of many areas that you will be able to engage, whether that be through special education or through English learners, or through our equity work. You will notice, and on the screen today, you'll see supporting students in virtual environments, and that is just 2 short days from now on September 17th. It is our typical monthly webinar time, you'll notice. And so we, through the course of this year, have committed ourselves to ensuring that the content that you're receiving is delivered through our monthly timeframes, and that you certainly have points of contact with us to be able to address any concerns that are specific to your operation or to your sending students to AEDY programs. So to access and register, please go to our PaTTAN calendar. You will see that the link is there, and you'll be able to register for the upcoming monitoring webinar, and you get great information from our colleague, Kat Zimmerman. The next area I really want to highlight, and Jess had mentioned this before, and I thank her for doing that. We have spent, as a team, the better course of a year now almost evaluating and supporting the information that the field needs from us, and placing that information, whether it be procedural or related to some content and support that the AEDY program needs to further complete this work. And so you may access, and if you don't have an account, again, as Jess explained earlier, you're just simply either, if you have an Android, open your camera and place it over the QR code. If you're an Apple user, you're fortunate, you're going to go right in once you scan on that QR code, and you will have an opportunity to see the information for registration as a student and be able to access all the information post our trainings and supports. Whether we send that information out via email through Leader Services and our sendouts, or whether we do a training like this training today, all information is posted there, as well as on our PaTTAN YouTube channel and our PaTTAN website, to ensure that the data and information that we're providing you is comprehensive, and you're able to locate it and do something with it. So on behalf of our AEDY team here, on behalf of Jess Keener-Hawes and myself today, I want to thank you for your attention, and again, just put a plug out there to ensure that the chairperson will be reaching out to you, and if you have any immediate questions, please email the chairperson of your monitoring, and we can further assist you with preparation for the upcoming week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I just want to take this opportunity to answer a few questions, and I want to just invite Jess to come on with us as well, and she and I will begin to answer some questions that you may have. We will monitor the chat box at this point to answer any questions that you have that have come up through the course of the presentation today. So one of the first questions, and I had gone through this just prior, but that all of our information from today will be located in minimally 2 locations. First, it will be on the PaTTAN YouTube channel, fully accessible with all the pieces and parts that we presented to you today. Additionally, the information will be available to you on Schoology. The next question that I believe came up earlier on in the presentation was related to parent surveys. And so the parent survey question comes up pretty frequently for us in terms of monitoring. And Jess and I have been monitoring for many years in some capacity. And so what we're requesting of all of our AEDY programs and LEAs is that you're jointly working together to engage families in this process. The result of receiving information from parents and the feedback from parents is going to better allow you, whether you're the sending LEA or the AEDY program, to address the areas that the parent needed maybe some different support as a result of their child being placed into an AEDY program. And so one of the lessons learned that I had from year one of this process was that those that were monitored in cohort one that truly engaged their families, maybe they came in for a formal periodic review meeting, and the AEDY program said, you know, do you mind sitting down and completing this survey for us? It'll take you less than 5 minutes. The result of that interaction for the family during the monitoring process truly gave a valuable feedback. So we're not going to identify a number per se, because we want each LEA and AEDY program to have reasonable attempts to having the parent access the survey. The survey is fully accessible on their cell phone. And so this was a great feature that Leader Services put in place for us some time ago, and we're readily taking advantage of it. So in terms of parent surveys, you know, continue to find different methods that you can have parents engage, whether that be while they're there on site with you, or maybe just walking them through virtually a few slides, you know, in terms of how to get in, how to use a QR code. They'll be able to, I think, just readily participate if you could provide them that access and support. The other thing I will say is that you can take from the slides that were presented today, once they're available to you, to be able to provide that information to parents. Another resource that the team developed this summer was a Q&A document for parent survey, to which we will provide to you during the pre-monitoring Zoom call, which for many of you has already been scheduled to get you ready for the specifics of what documentation you need. So we will provide you that parent survey document that will hopefully explain things a little bit more explicitly in parent-friendly language that will ensure just a greater participation. The last item that I'm going to add, just from the questions that were asked prior to those being added in the chat box now, is the FSA. And so during the presentation, I appreciate everyone's feedback as we're going through. I am readily communicating with Leader Services, and so I have simplified the process of the sending LEA accessing their FSA. And so prior, if you had tried to get in during the presentation, you had 2 clicks to be able to access the full FSA to get into it. Now you will be able to see that FSA icon directly on your dashboard.
So the other question Brian asked, and I appreciate this question, is during the monitoring, special education documents are allowed to be uploaded and actually must be uploaded. So our team has the ability with the Bureau of Special Education to review those documents. The required documents are the following: the permission to evaluate, permission to reevaluate, the child's last evaluation, the invite, the IEP, the NORAP, and most important for the AEDY work is the manifestation determination review. You may ask where you would upload these documents. So uploading those documents for the LEA would be under the informal hearing section. For programs, you're going to upload it under AEDY requested documents. So if you have any further questions regarding this process, please feel free again to reach out to your point of contact or chairperson to help assist you in the completion of this process. So Patty's asking about the original referral. Yes, you can still, that part is still open under informal hearing, but AEDY programs, if the student's already placed, they should have these documents at the program. So therefore, one party or the other should have the availability to upload these documents for our review. One of the other questions is, if we do not have any students participating in AEDY, are there steps necessary for the a LEA to complete for the monitoring. Yes, you still have to complete the questionnaire, the 10 questionnaires we discussed previously, that discusses all the components you would have to outline procedurally to coordinate should you have a student placed in the AEDY setting.
So Jess, I'm not seeing any other questions that are present in the group chat. I just want to let all of the AEDY programs know that if you're in cohort 2 and those sending LEAs, that we will be setting that pre-monitoring Zoom call with you within the next few weeks to prepare you and get you ready with the documentation. We do understand that this was quite a bit of time this morning in terms of getting all of this information to you. We appreciate your time on today and know that we will be able to personalize any questions and certainly responses to your individual sites so that if there's any concerns, we can address them direct with you with your team. So please keep an eye out on Schoology as well as on our YouTube channel for PaTTAN for the presentation today. It will be available in all the recorded and live parts of the presentation. And any question that came into the Zoom group chat, we will also outline for you to be able to read through the responses that were presented today. We thank you. We wish you a wonderful week. And if there's anything we can do in the meantime prior to our preset meeting, just please reach out to your point of contact. Thank you.